Hi kids, today we're going to be making some edible cookie dough. Now this is for the CHOP Junior Library program. My name is Kate, I'm a kids page, and Miss Lori asked me to make some edible cookie dough for you guys so I can show you how to do it. Okay, so some things you're gonna need to make it is an empty bowl, preferably one of a bigger size. It doesn't have to be too large, but medium size is good. Then you're gonna need 2 tablespoons of milk. You're gonna need 2 tablespoons of sugar, just regular white sugar will be fine. You're gonna need 1/4 cup of packed brown sugar. Now, if you can tell, it's kind of in the shape of the measuring cup that we measured it in. That's how you know it's packed in very well, when it comes out in the shape of the cup. Then you're gonna need 3/4 a cup of flour. And what we're gonna do with this later is we are going to bake it in the oven to make sure that it's healthy to eat, because eating raw flours actually can be bad for you, and so we'll get to that later. Now you're gonna need about 1/4 a cup of chocolate chips, but you can adjust that to taste. And if you don't like chocolate chips, you can add in cinnamon or other things to flavor it however you like. And you're gonna need 1/2 cup of softened butter. Sorry, not 1/2 cup, half a stick. 1 stick is actually 1/2 cup, so you're gonna need 1/4 cup of butter, softened. And to soften it, what you can do is you can leave it out in room temperature for a few hours until it comes to room temperature. You're gonna need a little bit of vanilla extract, not a whole bottle, just a splash, but we'll do that in later. Then you're gonna need some cinnamon. Once again, just a little bit, we won't need this much. And you're gonna need a pinch of salt, so nowhere near this much salt, just a little bit. Okay, so now we are going to spread our flour out on a baking sheet. And because flour is loose, it won't really stick to anything, so you won't need to spray it or anything. So we're just gonna carefully shake it out evenly. And it's fine if you don't get it super even. You can spread it out with your fingers. As long as you washed your hands, make sure that your hands are very clean. I washed mine before I started, so then I can use my hands to spread it out. Get it nice and even. This isn't super even, but it should be fine. Now we're going to take it and put it into a preheated oven. The oven should be preheated to 350 degrees. And be very careful when you're doing this. You definitely want parental supervision. Now carefully slide it in, don't touch the oven. And now we are going to bake it for about 7 minutes to make sure that the flour is completely cooked and healthy to eat. Okay, so now we're going to mix our wet ingredients together, and we're going to start by putting our softened butter in a bowl. Once again, a medium-sized bowl like I told you about at the beginning. And then we're going to take our white sugar, 2 tablespoons of that, and then our 1/4 cup of brown sugar. And then we have some other ingredients we'll add into this in a bit, but first you need to cream this all together, and I'll show you how to do that. I'm going to be using an electric mixer, but you could use some sort of spatula, or you could use a whisk. It just might be a little tougher on your arm, but whatever you can use will work. Okay, so now you're gonna need to mix it together until it's about this consistency. It's not quite as creamy as normal cookie dough because we're not gonna be using eggs, but to substitute the fact that we're not using eggs, we're going to add 2 tablespoons of milk. And then we're also going to add a small splash of vanilla extract to taste. Just a very, very tiny amount. That's probably good. And now you're gonna need to mix this together until it's fully incorporated. Okay, so now we're going to mix our dry ingredients in, and we already put in the flour off camera because putting in the flour takes 2 people, so that means you're probably gonna need to ask a sibling or parent to help you with this because it can get kind of messy. We did spill some somewhere, so maybe it is a good idea to use parchment in the future just so you can lift up the parchment and then funnel it in. But we still got most of the flour in, and that should still be fine. So the flour's already in there. And the other things we need to add in is a pinch of salt. So we just take a small pinch, sprinkle it in, maybe 2 pinches because salt tastes good. And then I'm gonna add a splash of cinnamon to taste. You don't have to do this, it's optional, but I think it helps the flavor of the cookie dough. I'm gonna do a small dash there. And now we're gonna mix this all together. Okay, so now that the dough part of our cookie dough is done, we can add the chocolate chips, or you can add any other seasonings or fillings you want to make it your own. Now I'm gonna add 1/4 cup, but you can add more if you want, or less, depending on what your preference is. And with this particular batch of cookie dough, because it's more of a creamier cookie dough, if you want it to be more uniform, you could add less milk in the future. But this is gonna be more of like a creamy cookie dough type thing, more just for eating. Okay, so now this is my version of a chocolate chip cookie dough recipe. And with this, you can freeze it if you want to, and that would make a very interesting snack. You can make different flavors of it, and you can try this out at some other time at your house if you want to.
Well, I hope that you had fun making Miss Kate's edible cookie dough the traditional way. Now we're getting ready to get started on our allergy-free recipe. So you're going to need some basic equipment, very similar to how Miss Kate made hers. You're going to need equipment that hasn't come in contact with any kinds of flour or grain products. So what I have today is a plain cookie sheet lined with some wax paper, some mixing bowls. I like glass because they're very easy to clean and it's fun to see the stuff inside there. A mixing spoon, measuring cups, measuring spoons, and a cookie dough scoop. It looks like an ice cream scoop. Okay, here's the ingredients that we're going to be using today for our allergy-free edible cookie dough recipe. I like to use Enjoy Life mini chips, semi-sweet. We're going to be using a little bit of kosher salt. I'm using almond milk, but you can use any dairy-free milk that you have sitting around your house. There's oat milk and all kinds of milks. I'm using Earth Balance vegan buttery sticks. I'm using pure vanilla extract. And our main ingredient that we're going to be using is Bob's Red Mill old-fashioned rolled oats, gluten-free. And the difference between gluten-free rolled oats and regular rolled oats that you buy in the store is that these are processed in a grain-free processing plant. So they're not coming in contact with any other grains that might contaminate them. Now we're ready to make our oat flour from our rolled oats. Now our recipe calls for 1.5 cups of flour, and to get that much, we're probably going to need about 2 cups of our oats. So that's about what you can start out with. You're going to need a food processor for this. So you may need an adult to help you operate this. It's pretty easy. So I think I have about 2 cups of rolled oats in my bag. So I'm just going to dump it in. I'm going to put the lid on, because if I don't put the lid on right, my food processor won't work. Click it in place. I'm going to turn it on, and I'm just going to let it run for about 5 minutes, or until my oats look nice and soft and smooth. Okay, let's start to put our recipe together. For this recipe, you're going to need your 1.5 cups of oat flour, nice and finely ground, 1/2 cup of white or granulated sugar, 1/3 cup of brown sugar packed, just like you saw Kate do in her recipe. You're going to need a tablespoon of vanilla extract. You can never have enough vanilla extract. A pinch of kosher salt, about 1/4 teaspoon. 1/2 cup of our chocolate chips. 1 to 3 teaspoons of our milk alternative, or almond milk in this case. And you're going to need 6 tablespoons of butter softened to room temperature. So what does that mean when we have 6 tablespoons of butter? Well, it's easy. On any butter package, and even our Earth Balance butter, it gives you little tablespoon increments on here. So it's easy to just open the package and cut it where you need it. And then I also sliced it in chunks so that it's easier to mix into our bowl. So our first step when we're mixing is to mix all the dry ingredients together, just like you saw Miss Kate do in her recipe. So we're going to add the oat flour, the granulated sugar, the brown sugar, and the salt. And when I'm mixing my dry ingredients together, I like to use a whisk because it mixes it up very nicely. So we're just gonna mix this up. I'm gonna make sure to get all the big lumps out of our brown sugar. And I might even want, that brown sugar is lumpy, I might want to use my spoon and break up the chunks of my brown sugar. Break up chunks, and I'm not using a mixer, which is nice for you. You can just use your muscles to mix this edible dough recipe together. Okay, now that our dry ingredients are nice and smooth, look at that, amazing, right? I cheated a little bit. I threw it back in the food processor. Now that that's all nice and smooth, we're gonna add some of our other ingredients. We're gonna add our wet ingredients. So we're gonna add our butter, and we're gonna add our vanilla. You can never have enough vanilla. And we're gonna mix that up. And we're gonna mix it until it's kind of crumbly. Squish, squish. We're gonna squish our butter up against the wall a little bit to get it mixed. And on that last step, if your brown sugar wasn't all mixed in nice and fine, it's okay. Now that we've added our butter and our vanilla, we get this like crumbly stuff. Now we're gonna add our chocolate chips. We're just gonna mix it up lightly. Do, 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 do. It's okay to sing while you're cooking. I do it all the time. And then we're gonna add our milk alternative, about a teaspoon at a time. So you just want to put a little bit in and then mix it. And you want to mix it until it comes together and you can kind of squeeze it into a ball. Mine looks a little dry still. So I think I'm going to add a little bit more, about a teaspoonful more. Doesn't have to be exact measurements. Oh, and now it's starting to get a little more, a little less dry. But I think I'm still gonna put, my last teaspoon of milk alternative. And yes, you should always make funny noises when you're cooking. Now, as you're cooking, if you accidentally lick your fingers, don't forget to wash your hands, especially if you're making this recipe for somebody else in your family. All right, that looks pretty good. So if I take a spoonful of it and I squish it into a ball, oh yum, I want to eat it right now. It's going to stay together. And our next step, final step, is going to be, depending on how big you want your edible cookie dough to be, we're going to turn it into balls. So we're going to scoop it up kind of hard, and then we could shape it into cookie dough balls, and we're going to place it on our cookie sheet. Now that we've used our scoop and made our balls, we put them on our cookie sheet. We're gonna stick them in the freezer for about 20 minutes. Now this recipe doesn't get hard as a rock when you freeze them. After you take them out, you can put them in an airtight container. They'll be soft every time you come out. They're delicious. If there's someone in your family who's a vegan or who has allergies, milk allergies, dairy, flour, this is a perfect recipe for them. Happy baking. I hope to hear from you about what your favorite recipe is. And don't forget, it's June. You can sign up for summer reading online. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.